Hi and welcome. It's been a while. I just kind of wanted to, I've been exploring a lot of different mediums for talking about my thoughts about things, but I think I do always return to this kind of like video diary type format because I do find it very comfortable and very much a good way for me to express what I'm thinking and, get that stream of consciousness down. So today I kind of wanted to talk about medicine. I have a lot of thoughts about the medical field, and I'm honestly really trying to learn more. I came upon this radical political reading list that I'm working my way partly through. I am very slowly slogging through Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer, which is a book about indigeneity and just alternatives to Western medicine. I'll talk a little bit about that, but I do want to talk a lot about Western medicine as well, and I just want to put a disclaimer that I really hope that I can express my ideas with enough humility that you can engage with me, and I don't want to necessarily lead anyone astray. Medicine is a very sensitive topic, I think, and it does. I'm not like anti-science in any specific way, in any broad way. I just wanted to share some concerns that I have, or just as somebody who, for whom health is a part of me because I live in a corporeal body, right? So everybody has to entangle with medical system, not just the system, which is one topic, but also just the field of medicine in general and the approach in which we take towards health. And I think there's a lot there that we can talk about. So I actually recently had a Twitter, because I was thinking about this one night. I was so distraught about this because it was before I was about to go to the doctor by myself for the first time. And I asked on Twitter, have you ever gone to a doctor and walked out being like, that was a valuable use of my time. I really learned something about my own health, my own conditions that I didn't know before. Or that, it was valuable. And in my mind, something that might be very valuable is a diagnosis, or confirmation that's very, relieving to you. That's something that I'm personally seeking right now is, I want to know if I'm simply gaslighting myself, if I'm just going crazy, or I need an affirmation, a confirmation of, no, you actually have this condition, you're not insane, or you don't need to just suck it up, right? Those are real. And that would absolutely be a valuable thing. Or if a doctor, literally did some tests on you and you found out, you had cancer, you had some, you had a condition that you didn't know, for example, or, lots of things STDs or any type of thing like that. And I absolutely agree with that. I think my issue is that the majority of times, and by the way, the poll came out about 50-50, 50% of people, just a small circle, not any kind of statistically significant sample or anything, but just anecdotally, 50% of people said, not really, And I was just thinking about this because I'm from Taiwan and we have single-payer healthcare. I do believe in single-payer healthcare. I do think that it's amazing that, everyone should have access to healthcare. The thing is, I'm personally very interested in moving beyond this kind of thinking, just in my own thinking, not in the activism, but just in my own thinking. Once we have provisions for everyone to have health care, how can we ensure that it's actually something that benefits people? Or is there just no way because the field of medicine isn't there yet, right? And truthfully, it's very well possible that it's not there yet. And I think that that's perhaps a misconception on my part is what can we even expect doctors to be able to tell us, right? With what degree of precision, with what, I don't know, I just think with all that we learn in bio and we know doctors go to school for 7 years, or there's just this immense energy, right? This whole body of energy, so many people in the medical field around the world, and we still can't tell just because we always have to observe by basically inductive reasoning. Like, you have to build it up, right? Like, from the symptoms, like, oh, your leg hurts, oh, you have a cough, oh, you have no taste, oh, you have COVID, right? That's a joke, but an example. The leg is not related, but like, and sometimes if you're lucky for a certain like condition, you can do some kind of blood test, blood work, right? But honestly, or like genetic stuff seems rare, low key. And like, we definitely don't know like enough about nature and all that, you know, like the newest disease, the newest little mutation, etc. So I don't know. I've just, you know, with single payer healthcare, I was able to visit the doctor a lot, or, you know, at a more frequent amount, and I think than I might have if I was living in the U.S., because even with insurance, it's still expensive. But every time I went to visit somebody, you know, like a doctor, didn't really like figure out what was wrong with me, you know, like, let's say I had leg pains, etc., you know, like, or I started fainting when I was around like 16. I fainted twice in school, and so we went to the doctor, and they listed out, you know, certain things that could have been. They didn't really know. Tried to do a they tried to do I guess you could say a psychiatric type thing. I don't know. They hooked me up to some kind of machine, and and after they tested it, they were like, normal, you know. I lose a lot of faith in medicine through that. Not gonna lie. I think that surely it's something we all have to do as a step, right? But just the extent to which we can rely on it to tell us the truth about ourselves is very limited, to be honest with you. That's another thing I do take quite issue with. I think it's something that makes me profoundly uncomfortable with the field of medicine, or the way that it's set up, and I think maybe that's just the way it has to be. I'm just saying it's like a point that I think about, is somebody else gets to know more truth about you, or they get to know the truth about you before you do. And I do find that a little bit off. I do think that I don't like that. As just thinking holistically as a person, I think that it is very egregious. And for me personally, I would say that this was most pronounced when I was in Taiwan, and I would go to the doctor and speak in Chinese or Mandarin, and the doctor, all doctors I think are trained in, you know, English, like the very like standardized, like, you know, names of illnesses, names of conditions, right? And in their system, they were typing in English, but they were trying to communicate the results to myself and my mother in Chinese. And to me, it just seemed like the Mandarin version was more simplified, more reductive than if I knew the full name of the condition in English, and if I knew like every little detail that's contained in those Latin words that I could look up, you know, because I think that, and this can be a linguistic issue with, like, you know, medicine originating in the West, so like it's more precise there, and here it's just like, oh, a family, like it's as if they said coronavirus, right? And as in the entire family of illnesses that includes the flu and SARS and MERS and COVID, right? Like, that's just not precise. That's not specific. Yeah. So that's one thing. Another thing, sorry, I have like a list this time. I usually never do, and you can tell why, because I've got 9 minutes without even having to reference my list. But, you know, I definitely just can't stand other people knowing more about me than me. That's something that is just a core tenet of my personality. Yeah. I don't know. I think that for me, but to go a little bit back on the single payer healthcare thing, man, our healthcare system is pretty broken. I mentioned that I'm trying to get a diagnosis. I don't know if I will, but I just feel like I'm watching myself self-destruct but not being able to do anything about it because I can't get access to a psychiatrist. Like, they're all booked out until like 2 weeks or something. And there's a Saeed Jones quote that I come back to a lot, which is called, I don't know if I'll feel this way for much longer, which is why I'm typing so quickly right now. That's the crux of medical conditions, right? We should try to fight for people to get care in a timely fashion. But I think under, one could say, capitalism, I think maybe the next frontier is about state licensing laws. I think that would be something that would really broaden. I mean, if you're already doing telepsychiatry, right, or teletherapy, telemedicine, the extent to which state licensing should matter, I mean, I'm sure that's a lobby issue. You know, they want to limit the supply. But it's just like these artificial barriers, I think, are very stark, and they are becoming more stark, in my opinion, and more obvious. So, yeah. Okay, another point I wanted to talk about a little bit more, and I referenced it a little bit in the indigenous medicine type thing, is just Chinese medicine versus Western medicine. I have a big issue with just wanting to stand up for cultural traditions that have helped certain populations thrive for literally thousands of years, yet are not accepted by modernity, which is a synonym for Western. I'm not, like, gonna go full, like, I don't even want to say tanky, that's not the right word, but I don't want to go, like, full blank pilled, like, you know, kind of like red pilled when you're, like, pulled over to the other side. Not really, but something I don't like is I think that Americans, possibly, or people who of a kind of Western persuasion, perhaps, tend to think of culture as something that is of the past, and modernity as something, you know, modern, right? And so, like, that just honestly relegates every single other non-Western country into a thing of the past. Or not even country, culture, my bad. Every non-Western culture is relegated to a thing of the past. And why is that? It's actually because Western imperialism. But due to Western imperialism, now the West, aka modernity, looks really good. Like, it's like, wow, that's the new flashy thing. And then all the stuff that was conquered, imperialized, stolen, brutalized, etc., such as indigenous traditions, right? They just look outdated. And in those ways, it becomes harder to preserve them or see their intrinsic value, and they become more like art or something to be, like, appreciated, but not like a core tenet of somebody's, like, personality formation, the way they see the world, their identity, etc., right? Like, I think that, like, now if we see somebody, the knee-jerk reaction, I think, to someone in regalia, the knee-jerk reaction, not necessarily, again, it's, like, not PC at all, but would be like, oh, wow, like, they're honoring their ancestors, like, you know, or even just someone saying, like, oh, yeah, it's just their costume or something that they wear for special occasions, but, you know, like, and it's true, right? Because, like, most of the time we are immersed by the modern world, but there are vestiges, and I think one of the vestiges is medicine, where, you know, it actually still thrives, and I'm really taken by that fact. Like, I'm really, I can't necessarily say that I am, like, a full believer of Chinese traditional medicine. I also can't say that I know anything about it. Overall, I'm pretty anti-medication. I have been. I don't know if that's going to change soon, but yeah. I mean, I've never really been on any medication in my entire life. And, you know, like, cannot take a pill, hated Tylenol, etc., right? Like, and that was another concern I had with the Taiwanese doctors, is they wouldn't really like diagnose you with anything, but they would prescribe pills like nobody's business, right? Like, and it wasn't even clear like what that pill was. I mean, sure, like, I understand that, like, when you give people precision, they don't necessarily use it. Like, you tell them, oh my god, this is this blank pill. Like, people don't know what that is. That's true. But I don't know, like, I think people have a right to know, right? I think people have a right to know what they're putting in their bodies, even if they aren't the most well-versed. You know, for the Chinese medicine versus Western medicine thing, I think that also applies to more broadly, like, the psyche of a person. People saying that certain behaviors or certain methods of, you know, interpersonal relationships, etc., are toxic, especially backing it up with a body of psychological evidence, is something that is difficult for me now to accept, to be honest with you, because, and surely I wouldn't have thought this way even a year or two ago. I'd be like, yeah, like, there's scientific evidence, right? So whatever. But, and so, like, that's true, and these other cultures just kind of need to adapt because now we have, you know, evidence and everything. But, you know, like, it's very hard for me to say that one culture is superior to another. I think that's a slippery slope that we absolutely cannot go on, because that implies, I think that implies, it's a very capitalistic mindset that implies a certain optimization of every aspect of life, that we can find, you know, that peak of human society or human civilization, and we can find that peak by, you know, especially through science. I think science really accelerates this application of this mindset to every aspect of life, even those that I don't think it should be applied to. And I'm not anti-science. I just don't think that the scientific mindset needs to be applied to everything. But one example of this, and so again, like, I'm really loath to say, like, one culture has come up with a better answer than another. I think that the only good examples we have now are basically East versus West, to be honest. You know, I think in South America and also in Africa, there might still be, or in the Middle East, there might still be a lot of diverse practices and cultures. But due to a relative poverty, I am actually very unsure that those cultures will survive without a very sustained effort for the future. And so, just from my personal perspective, I'll focus on East Asia versus, you know, the West, so to speak, and the current, you know, pseudo-Cold War. You know, like, there's a lot of discourse, especially among Asian Americans, of Asian American parents, like, they don't, like, show their love, like, they just cut fruit, like, oh, it's so, and there are always, like, Americans, like, non-Asian Americans saying, like, oh, your parents give you curfews, or they dictate, like, who you can date or something. That's so toxic. I understand, like, I get it. I know that from an American framework that is wrong. But I beg that those people have put some respect on where those traditions come from. I beg that those people actually just, like, don't dismiss. And I don't know that defending something on the basis of, oh, it's a cultural tradition that's been there for thousands of years is necessarily right. But I also don't think that it is fair to use one culture's framework and unilaterally apply it to another culture, and make a certain judgment about it, because I think it does lead to a slippery slope of modernity, Western psychology is better than, you know, certain other traditions. I'm very wary of that. Yeah. And this is just regarding, like, these interpersonal behaviors. I think there is progress to be made, and certain attitudes to be spread from, let's say, from the West to the East, certainly, right? But I just think, like, it needs sensitivity, because I think that a lot of times these projects are pursued with a very infantilizing perspective, a very, like, yeah, I mean, it's just, yeah. You know, like, the Chinese have 53 words for shame, but they only invented the word for love after exposure to the West. So that kind of just tells you all you need to know. I think there's a lot of discourse about, oh my God, like, Chinese American parents, and I think broadly people say Asian American parents. I don't know that that's necessarily true. Oh, they never say I love you, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's hard. It's really hard, because I know that, like, these second-gen Asian Americans have American values because of the American education system and their peers in their society. So to say that they are necessarily calling them out for not providing what they need is just a cultural dissonance that, you know, is unfortunate and very difficult. But I want to emphasize again that, like, through some reflection, one needs to understand that, like, it's very hard, in my opinion, to say what is better. It's really, like, you really need to think it through before you say that. Yeah. So those are my thoughts about medicine so far. But I have so many thoughts about this, and I was talking to my friend who's pre-med, and also my cousin who is a bio PhD, and just, you know, listing off all my complaints about, like, doctors, field of medicine. Oh, I missed one. Oh my God, sorry. One more thing. I really don't like, again, this comes from the inductive reasoning thing. I think that doctors often, it's two sides of, like, a very paradoxical coin. On one hand, doctors don't listen to women and Black people, and often dismiss their pain or dismiss their concerns as something that is just, that's normal, or, you know, like, there's a lot about how people, doctors think that Black people experience less pain, which is very, very, very twisted. On the other hand, I think that, in my experience at least, they rely too much on a patient's ability to communicate, which I don't think patients are equipped to do in any way, shape, or form, in my opinion. Someone asked me, so I went to the doctor for, like, a leg pain, and my mom kept encouraging me, you know, how does it feel? What does it feel like? So that they can, you know, diagnose you, right? I don't know. I had no vocabulary for this, and I still wouldn't be able to, no matter what language. And that's something that I think, man, like, I hope somebody's working on solving this issue, because that little lapse in communication, man, like, that is so huge. Like, that is huge, right? Like, and unfortunately, like, doctors have to take you at your word. How are they supposed to measure, like, your pain? Oh my God, I went to the doctor, and there was, like, this pain rating scale that was, like, based on smiley faces, because it was, like, a pediatrician, so it was, like, supposed to help kids, like, understand, like, how, or verbalize how bad the pain was. Similar to that, but there's obviously different modes of pains. Another example is migraines or headaches. You know those memes where it's like, oh, headache here, and then full headache is, like, kid being bad or something, like, just, like, something funny. I have never, like, experienced zoned headaches. I've started getting headaches more recently, but not in a way where I could be like, oh my God, it's here, like, not at all. So I don't know if, like, there's something wrong with me, or, like, I just can't verbalize things, and I can't be the only one, you know, like, yeah. So anyway, thank you for listening. Yeah, hope you enjoyed these rambles about medicine and our current medical and healthcare system.